One of my favorite things about the fall is fall food, and that's what this show is all about today. So we're gonna get started on these awesome tacos that have a base of squash, and this is a delicata squash. We've used this before on the show, and what's so cool about these is that you can roast them and actually eat the outside. You can eat this like skin part of them, which makes them super, super easy to cook. So to get started, have your oven set at 375 degrees, and we're gonna get this guy all chopped up and then roasted in a chipotle miso glaze. So just go ahead and chop the ends off. And make sure to wash this down because we're eating the whole thing. And we're just gonna cut it right in half. Okay, now just scoop out the seeds as you would with any other squash. Once you have all the seeds out of there, just go ahead and chop it into pieces that are about 1/2 inch thick. All right, we're gonna set these aside and then make our miso chipotle glaze. So to make this miso chipotle glaze, we're gonna use a teaspoon of adobo sauce, and that is the stuff that when you buy chipotle peppers and they come in a can, this is just the saucy stuff that's all around the peppers. So add that to a bowl. Add a tablespoon of agave nectar, a tablespoon of lemon juice, which is about 1/2 of a lemon, and a tablespoon of white miso paste, and mix everything together. All right, so we have our glaze made, and we're gonna take the pieces of squash, and I have a pan, and I have some panko crumbs. Now the panko crumbs are optional. If you don't use them, this dish could be gluten-free, but I like them. They're gonna add a little bit more texture and a little more dimension because this squash obviously is just very soft on its own. So we're gonna grab a piece of squash, roll it around in that glaze, and if you're using panko crumbs, go ahead and cover it in panko crumbs. And then just add that to a sheet pan, and we're gonna do this with all of the squash and then stick them in the oven for about 25 minutes. So while our squash is roasting in the oven, we're gonna roast 2 more vegetables to add to these tacos because it's the fall season. It's getting chillier out. We want those roasty, smoky kind of flavors. So I have about a cup of corn. I'm gonna add that to a bowl. We're gonna roast that along with some Brussels sprouts. And I have to tell you guys, roasted Brussels sprouts are like the best way to eat them ever. If you're used to like mushy boiled Brussels sprouts, trust me, you have to try these, they're amazing. So typically when I roast Brussels sprouts, I just chop them in half and then add a little olive oil and salt and put them in the oven. We're gonna cut these into kind of like shreds. So cut the stem off. And once you have them in half like this, we're just gonna cut them very thin into these little pieces. And these little pieces are gonna get really crunchy and crispy. And that's gonna add a little more texture to the tacos. So I'm gonna chop up like maybe 10 Brussels sprouts. There doesn't need to be an exact measurement. So we have our corn and Brussels sprouts in a bowl, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of olive oil, about a teaspoon or 2, and some salt, pepper, and about 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. We're gonna mix everything together and add this to a baking sheet, and we're just gonna put this in the oven along with our squash until everything just starts to get a little bit brown. So about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And you might wanna toss it once or twice while it's in there just to help it along. So before we plate our tacos, we're gonna make a really simple chipotle orange vinaigrette dressing. And this is gonna be like a really bright, fresh component to the dish. So start with 1 whole orange and just go ahead and squeeze the juice into a bowl. Add 1 tablespoon of red wine vinegar, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, 1.5 teaspoons of that adobo sauce, 2 teaspoons of agave nectar or maple syrup, and a little salt and pepper. Our vinaigrette is ready and we are gonna plate. So We have some corn tortillas here, and the corn tortillas make this a gluten-free dish. Again, if you omit the panko crumbs from our squash, then this whole thing is gluten-free, which is awesome. And when you buy corn tortillas, you'll see that they come like this. Just go ahead and put them in a hot pan. You don't even have to add oil, and they will brown up and crisp up and get really, really tasty. So there's a lot more texture when you do that. So we'll put those down. And I have here just some toppings, some fillings. This is lettuce, red onion, some avocado, because that's the greatest thing in the world. All right, now we'll put some of that squash in the tacos. And these got really nice and crispy too. A lot of good textures going on in here. And the corn and Brussels sprouts. Yum. Now we'll add a little bit of that vinaigrette. And if you're serving this, like say at a dinner party or something, you can always give people their own little tiny bowls or dishes with some of this vinaigrette, and they can just dip the tacos in there, and that way it's not getting too sloppy when you initially serve it. But right now we're just gonna add it on top. And I'll throw a little cilantro on there because I love it. And it looks really pretty. There we go. I hope you guys will try this awesome recipe for the fall. It's bright and fresh, but still really earthy and warm. Great for this time of year. So these are our Chipotle squash tacos.